right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Playbook. My name is Paul. We are still rocking out here in 2022 in the new studio for our second in-person podcast. My guest today is Amanda Meunier. She's actually a member of Mr. Mike Peoples' team, our guest from last week. Somebody I've done a video with before, and she's pretty good with the video stuff, so I figured she would be a good guest for today. How are you, Amanda?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Thanks for asking. So, Amanda, I thought it would be good to have you on, not only because what I just said, where you are pretty good with the video stuff, but also because you and I were just talking about it's good to get a couple different perspectives on here. I know you haven't been doing it as long as Mike, obviously, but Austin was in a similar situation, and him and I did one, and it turned out pretty well. I think people like to hear the different points of view. So thank you for joining me, first of all.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Of course. So I wanted to start off just by digging a little bit into your background. I know you and I have kind of done that same question before, but if you wouldn't mind just telling us how you got your start in real estate and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So I started because of kind of the same way everybody gets into real estate. Someone asks you, why don't you do this? Because you have a good personality and it'd be a good thing to get into, because everyone thinks it's a good thing to get into. And it is. But I had a family friend who said that I had a good personality and that I should look into it, and she'd be a great way to, know. It's all about who you know in this business. And she was like, since I have an in, I should get into it. So I did. Took my test and then joined her brokerage with her. And then after some changes and everything, I went over to another brokerage and another, because she got out of real estate. So that was like, oh, what am I going to do now? But I joined 54 Realty after 3 trial brokerages, and it has changed my career completely. I stayed here it's been about 6 months to 7 months now with 54 Realty, and I've closed. Tomorrow will be 6 deals, but at the other ones I closed 0. So that 54 is a completely different brokerage from every place else. But yeah, it's awesome.
So did Mike kind of reel you in over here, or did you hear about it another way?
So I actually heard about it through Austin Hammer. He came into one of my open houses and he was talking about how his brokerage gives you leads. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I've never heard of that. That's crazy. So I talked to him about it, and then I reached out to Mike on Facebook and I said, hey, Mike, I know you're my old coach and I see you work at 54 Realty. What can you tell me about it? And he called me up immediately and was like, you just have to get over here. You have to come over tomorrow and you're going to start making some deals. And I was like, okay, all right. And so that's what happened.
Well, awesome. It's funny because actually Mike and I were talking a little bit about you last week. I don't know if you saw his latest episode, but we were talking about his focus for the new year and like the things that he's really honing in on. And one of them is just developing his team, yourself included. And we were talking just about the different types of, not necessarily personalities, but just backgrounds that the people on his team have. Obviously with yourself, you're younger like me. I talked to Austin a little bit about this as well. So it's funny that it came up, but I'm wondering your perspective on this. So the way I phrase it to Austin is that in my previous job, I was pretty young. I was like maybe 20 years old at the time, and I was managing a group of older people, and perceptions were a little strange. I think people tend to look down on like younger folks, or maybe they just assume that they don't have much experience. So I'm wondering, how have you dealt with that? Or if you've even had any issues with that at all, any judgment from like clients or agents or anything like that. And how do you manage that sort of thing?
So no judgments really, which surprised me. That was my biggest fear getting into real estate, was that everyone was going to see my age. And then my dad's over here telling me, you look so young. You look much younger than your age. And I'm like, great. That
doesn't help.
But yeah, it doesn't at all. So it was just building the confidence at the beginning, thinking that everybody was going to judge me, but no one did. Everybody was very friendly. I've had ranging clients based on their age and just what they're looking for and stuff. And surprisingly, no one has ever said anything about it. And I just kind of build their confidence by being the best I can and having as much knowledge as I can, studying things, taking classes, doing trainings, knowing the terminology is important. Just because I've never bought a house on my own, so I was like, how am I going to go sell somebody something when I've never even done the myself? But being through the transactions, just, getting the experience, getting the practice is the most important part, and just getting out there and messing up. Failing is how you learn. Yeah. So you're not going to improve unless you're failing. So that's pretty much it. Is just learn as much as you can, get out there as much as you can, and look professional. Just dress up nicer than you would if you're 20 years older. just because people want to see you looking really professional. So that helps a little bit.
That makes sense. I remember the last training Joe gave, which Mike and I also talked about, and I think you were there as well, when a question was posed by, I think it was Nico, and he was talking about what you and I were talking about now, which is being a younger agent. How do you manage that? He felt like, I think he said something along the lines of like, people weren't going to take him seriously or something like that. And, people threw out a couple different answers, dressing professionally being one of them, knowing your stuff obviously being another. But then something else that was posed was aligning yourself with a team or a group of people that can support you basically, so that the client knows that you're not going it alone. Do you find that helps you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to say that I have a team behind me and meeting it, because there's so many working parts in the back that really help out our transactions, every single part of it. It really helps because like I tell them, all right, if I don't have the answer for your question, I know who does, and I'll go to them immediately and I'll go find it for you really quickly. So that's helpful. And another thing about starting real estate young is that how else are you going to build up the good experience? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you have to get started early. Yeah. That way you can build up really good, knowledge over time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like those jobs where they say like 5 years experience required for entry level. Well,
exactly.
No experience required to be a real estate agent. Just pass that exam and you can get the ball rolling. Yeah. So that's good advice, Amanda. I want to talk a little bit about your strategies for the new year, because I know you had a pretty good amount of success last year, like you were saying up top. And it's going to be a hectic year as far as we know. I'm sure you saw the projections that Tampa is supposed to be one of the hottest housing markets, or not. It was number one, right, of 2022 as projected by Zillow. So, different people are taking different strategies for that. We're in a unique position where we have to not only worry about just the market conditions, but being number one, right? So I was talking to Mike about it, and he was mentioning about focusing on the team and passing on good strategies to them, and that will help him reinforce his own good habits. So that's what he's doing. I'm curious, what kinds of things are you trying to focus on this year to enhance your business, so to speak?
Really, I'm going to focus on myself and bettering my marketing and kind of putting out there what I can do to benefit people. What am I going to do that's going to help them? How am I going to be useful? So just keeping up with the statistics of the market, knowing where things are going, so that when buyers come to me and ask me, how do I find a place if I don't have all this extra cash lying around? Yeah. And so I kind of help them with their strategies of what they're going to do if they don't have extra cash lying around, what their options are. So kind of just building my knowledge base and seeing how I can help the people who are running into problems. Because right now it's kind of like a cash is king market, where if you don't have cash, how are you going to win? So just building those techniques and tactics and stuff like that. And then getting out there and just meeting as many people as I can, because the people in this business are going to be helpful. The more lenders that I know, the more vendors that I know, it's going to help having all of those contacts and connections and stuff.
Shaking hands and kissing babies, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Networking, man. Oh, yeah. So, Amanda, that made me think of something. Actually, let me rewind a little bit there. To what you said up top about you haven't bought a home yet, but obviously you're advising a lot of people on things to do. I haven't bought a home either, so I can relate to you in that sense, although I'm not an agent. Do you encounter a lot of first-time home buyers? What would you say, like percentage-wise, is our first-time home buyers as compared to just the rest of the buyer pool?
I'd say more than normal, more than I expected. Like I said, I've only closed 6 deals, but I've dealt with more buyers, but out of those I've closed 6. And of those, I think only 1 was a first-time home buyer, and then the rest, weren't. So it's tough to be a first-time home buyer, especially in this market, but with the different types of loans that help out and stuff, it's not too hard. But it does help to have a realtor who has the knowledge that can help you. You know what I mean?
I was going to say, was that kind of easy? You said it was 1 transaction where it was a first-time home buyer. Did you guys find a sort of relation there, like you guys could kind of sympathize with each other?
Yes, exactly. And I've spoken to the lender about that for myself, so I was able to connect them and be like, hey, look, they're going through the same thing I'm going through, can you talk to them? And then we were able to like help them with the type of loan that they wanted, their credit score, the cash down payment assistance and stuff like that. So then they were able to find a home, and then negotiating the offer. It just takes talking to the listing agent and building a relationship with them, so that building rapport.
Makes sense. What sorts of things are you seeing market wise right now? I mean, I know you said that last year was, 6 or 7, you said 6 transactions, right? So we were in the seller's market still, obviously, and we are still today. Have you seen any changes in market conditions in your business day to day, or have things kind of held the same since last year?
For the most part, yeah, they've been the same, but there have been some changes in the different price ranges will have different competitiveness. And I've noticed that some of the price ranges that were more competitive have now slowed down a little bit. Whereas last year they were getting 10, 15, 20 offers. Now they're getting 4, 5, 6, which is, a lot less than they were before. So it's just slowed down a little bit. The prices aren't going as crazy above asking as they used to be, but it's still pretty much the same.
Pretty much. I saw this thing on Facebook today about somebody who, actually it might have been in our Slack channel, I can't remember, but somebody said that they had a listing that sold 50K over, I'm totally paraphrasing, but they got like 40 to 50 offers or something like that. So that's intense. I mean, I don't know, what kind of strategies do you use when you're trying to compete, I guess, in such a multiple offer scenario?
So to compete against that, you would want to ask first what the sellers are looking for, because that makes a difference. If your buyer wants to close really fast, but the seller needs a few months because they're still working things out, then you don't want to come in with that. So you got to figure out what the seller is looking for. So you want to kind of talk to the listing agent about that, and then talk to your buyer about what would make their offer the strongest. So higher down payment, higher escrow deposit, shorter inspection period, things like that will strengthen the offer, even if they don't have the most cash or the highest offer. Right. So your terms matter a lot, and just there's extra addendums and contingencies you can add in there that will allow you to, there's an escalation clause where you can submit the offer at one price and raise it. And then there's addendums that you can waive so that you don't have contingencies in there. So there's just ways to strengthen your offer even if you don't have the most cash.
You can finesse it a little bit. I see. So I want to pivot a little bit there, Amanda, because I'm sure you and I are both kind of tired of talking about the market on and off podcasts. So this one is kind of interesting, just something that I thought of because I don't know if you remember last video that we did, your cat was in the background or something like that, right? Yeah. So I know you're a big animal person, right? So am I. I have an interesting question for you. Joe has this series of like training videos, like 30-second little clips where he talks about like, it's oriented towards home buyers and home sellers, all different sorts of topics, right? Just like bite-sized pieces of advice. And there's one where he talks about people's pets getting in the way of their sale, right? Like people become emotionally attached to the pet. And when people come by for showings, the animal is out and it might, be off-putting to the buyer or something like that. Have you encountered any scenarios like that or?
So the other day I did show a house where there were dogs there, and the buyers did not seem to care that much. They were like, whatever, it's fine. And they've definitely run into places where it smells like animal, and that will kind of deter the buyers a little bit. But for the most part, it's just people want a home that's going to fit their animal. Yeah. So they're like, oh, is there yard space for the dog? Is there fencing for the dog? Is there carpet? Because I have dogs. So everything in the house, it all comes down to this little pet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The dog is kind of the main buyer.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, I'm even just looking for a place to rent. We were trying to, wholeheartedly avoid places with carpet because it's kind of a nightmare scenario to have a pet and carpet. So,
well, surprisingly, I told some people, I said, oh, it's got hard floors, which is perfect for the animals. And they said, no, we prefer carpet for our animals. And I was like, oh, you're the first person I've heard say that. What's your logic behind that? And they said, well, they have nails, so I don't want them scratching up the hardwood floor, and it's just better for them. And I was like, okay.
If you say so, yeah. It's like the lesser of two evils between scratches and smells, right?
Yeah, stains, smells, exactly.
Interesting. So I also think like, let's say you're selling your home and you're trying to stage it for buyers. Like, just imagine that they might be afraid of the pets or, they might not necessarily have pets. So I don't know. That's kind of the essence of what I was trying to get at there is in Joe's video. He's like, it's very easy for a seller to sort of become not necessarily blind, but they're so used to having the pet around and the smells and whatever other destruction comes with that you don't necessarily think that you might need to alter that a little bit when people come by to look at your home. So I just didn't know if you had encountered anything like that, but that's interesting. Yeah. Hardwood over carpet.
They usually lock them in a separate space, and then my buyers will walk through and they'll open the door and they'll be like, oh, hi kitties. You know what I mean? Exactly.
That's cute.
It's really cute. I love animals.
Likewise. We could do a whole separate podcast about animals, if I'm being honest. So, Amanda, on a different note here too, something that comes up a lot on this podcast is video marketing, obviously, because hello, we're on camera right now, right? But it's something that I think we're pushing for as a brokerage overall this year. And it's something that obviously you've done before. And I see on your Facebook more so recently, you're doing like tours of properties that you're showing, right? So I'm wondering, what was kind of the inspiration behind you picking that up a little bit more this year? And what recommendations would you have for agents who might be wanting to do that sort of thing?
I love that you brought that up because that's a big thing for me. The live videos were the biggest, like everybody loved them. I can't tell you how many people that I'd run into and they'd be like, oh, I saw your videos. And I'm like, you didn't comment, you didn't like it, but you saw it. And so like, even if they're not liking them, even if you don't get too much interaction, people are paying attention and they love videos. I made hundreds of posts, not a single word about any of them. I post a single live video for 2 seconds and I'm thinking, oh, I look so awkward. And somebody comes back, your video was awesome. So like really people love the videos. People that I didn't think would be paying attention to them have paid attention to them. So I highly recommend them. To do the videos, it's difficult at first if you're uncomfortable in the camera, which I think about 99% of people are, but it's just, no one's paying attention to that. Everyone just cares that you're out there. Everyone's just like, oh, wow, you're out there doing a video, you're showing a home. And it's going to stick in their head for a few minutes, then they're going to forget about it, and then they'll bring it back up to you when they see you. So it's not the end of the world. Just do it. You'll get more comfortable over time. It's really just getting the experience and doing it.
So just get over it, basically.
Yeah. No, don't worry about how you sound, how you look. No one cares about that. Everyone's just, because when I watch other people's videos, I'm not sitting there thinking how they sound, how they look. I'm just impressed. I'm just like, oh, yeah, they're out there. They're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Are you, I don't want to dig too deep into it, but other than like the sorts of plans that you have to show off homes that you're showing, do you have any other type of video plans this year or?
I definitely want to get more into video, other than just doing the lives. Like I'd like to do something that I can edit and something that I can kind of put out there, maybe like a weekly consistent thing. But for now, it's just the easiest to do the live videos because if I'm out doing a tour, I just have to pick up my phone, do a live video, and it's done, which is not a lot of work.
Yeah, as if you're doing a virtual tour for a client anyway. Exactly. So pretend you're talking to a client and it'll be a lot easier.
I'd like to do maybe even a podcast or something just to like talk to people about, there's so much that people don't know about real estate that they ask questions. Like most people don't know you need a pre-approval when you're looking at houses. And I'm like,
you do, yeah. Hate to break it to you, but you need one. It's funny that you mentioned doing other podcasts because I don't want to spill too many beans, but we have a lot of plans this year. I think I actually emailed you about something last month. So Joe has, like I said, we were talking about a second ago, he wants to make a big push for more video stuff this year. And like you said, there are a lot of unexplored facets of real estate, right? So some of the things would be talking about the local market, the Tampa Bay area, the Florida area, that sort of thing, but also just behind the scenes stuff that people don't really expect when getting into real estate, getting your pre-approval, other nonsense like that. So I think that's definitely a good idea. Not to say it's an untapped market because a lot of people do it, but it couldn't hurt to get that information out there. And like you said to your original point about whether or not people are really interacting with it, they're seeing it and it's providing value to people and they're seeing you in the forefront of their mind as a real estate agent, right? So I talked to Amy about that actually on an earlier episode, and she said something very similar where she's like, I don't even like watch them after I post them. I just put them out there and I hope that people enjoy them. And she gets a lot of positive reactions as well. So Amanda, to pivot a little bit back to you, I'm wondering if you could touch on a few things here. And whenever I ask these questions, I feel like I'm doing a job interview or something like that, specifically these two here. But I'm always interested to hear what people say, especially because you've had some success here in your career. So throughout the 6 or 7 months that you've been at this brokerage, or you can go even further back if you want, what would you say has been your biggest strength so far?
My biggest strength is, I always get this from buyers, is that they love how responsive I am and how on top of things I am and just personable. So I'd say that that's the reason why I got into real estate, was everyone said I had a great personality for it.
Yeah.
So that's definitely the strength that I have, is just talking to people and just building that good rapport with them and then being responsive, because they say, oh, an agent never got back to me. Well, I will always get back to people. Or, oh, this agent wasn't sending me listings. I'm always sending listings. So I'd say that's my biggest strength probably.
For sure. It interests me as well, like to touch on the responsiveness thing. Certainly you want to have boundaries in your life. If somebody texts you at 1 o'clock in the morning, you're not necessarily inclined to respond, right? But what sorts of things do you recommend for agents, like as far as drawing your own personal boundaries with clients? Would you, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, what is the cutoff time? Like, are you on vacation, like taking calls and that sort of thing, or?
Yeah, so I have to admit, I have to get better about my personal boundaries because if a client texts me, I will respond unless I'm with another client.
Right.
So I'm giving everybody my full attention, but if I'm with a friend, per se, that friend might not be getting my full attention because I'm trying to work. Or, you know what I mean? Like on vacation in Tennessee, I'm trying to work while I'm walking around a theme park. You know what I mean?
And hopefully they understand.
And yeah, people are always understanding about it, but it's you just never know when you're going to be working with real estate. So I have to get better about building the personal boundaries, but my recommendation for myself and other people is just respond, like check your phone every hour. You know, you don't want to be like going too long without responses. You can go an hour without responding, but just don't let it be like 2 to 3 hours without responding because you have your own life.
Yeah, that's true. I would think that'd be important for the client too, because I just imagine being on the other side of the phone and trying to work out the details of the transaction and just like stressing hardcore and not getting a response from someone, I'm sure only heightens that anxiety. Yeah. But I'm sure there is a healthy medium and it's probably different for everybody as well. I mean, I'm sure there are agents out there that don't necessarily have a social life, right? The work is the social life. Yep. So yeah, and that's all right, you know, to a certain degree. Just don't work yourself to death, people. But boundaries are for sure important. So that's a good point, Amanda. Yeah. On the other hand, another job interview question. I hesitate to use the word weakness, but everybody has, you know, roadblocks, obstacles, that sort of thing, things they have to overcome. What have you noticed, maybe something that you've had to overcome as far as a hurdle or something in your career, Amanda?
There have been a lot for sure. Probably the time management, like I just said, because when I first started, I would be so stressed out about deals that there were times where people were reaching out to me at 1 a.m. and I would be responding. You know what I mean? So it was kind of building that boundary, like you just said, which I'm still working on. I have been, just kind of organizing, because there's a lot to keep up with in this business. You know what I mean? A lot of numbers and everything and just times and stuff. So I'm really good at appointments, like keeping up with things, but I'm just bad with my numbers. You know, I need to be more on track of how much I'm spending, what I'm saving and everything like that. So pretty much the finances is where I slack a little bit, but and obviously just the fact that I'm young and I could use more experience. So, but that is going to come with the time.
Of course. I know Mike keeps a notebook, which stresses me out a little bit because I obviously am a tech nerd. So I just like to have everything in the computer. It's easily accessible across your devices. You don't have to worry about losing it, but he has this little notebook. He's got like a list of names in there. And I don't think I could do that. I really don't. He's a little bit old school though. If it works for Mike, you know, it works. So
I noticed every realtor has their own way of working their business. Like there's not a specific correct way to do it. It's kind of what's ever comfortable for you.
So Amanda, a lot of what I'm gathering from you, and this is good advice because I've often thought about getting my license myself, but it all just seems super overwhelming. So what I'm hearing a lot from you, which is kind of reassuring, is that a lot of this confidence and that sort of thing just comes with reinforcement, like just putting the work in. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, 100%. Like that's what I see everybody else struggle with, and that's what I struggled with the most. And it's true that you just have to get out there. You just have to get the experience. That's the only way that you're going to get more comfortable.
For sure. And there's another theme that I uncover from people who have been doing this for a long time, Joe, Mike, whoever, and they just say, and you even touched on this in the beginning, which is you just have to fail. Unfortunately, whether you want to or not, you're going to have to screw up probably a couple dozen times here and there until you figure out the best way to do things. There was a quote that Joe had in his training, which was like, and this is a little, you know, maybe corny, but he was like, the year that Babe Ruth broke the home run record, he also broke the record for strikeouts. And I think his point of putting that up there was like, yeah, you might attain a lot of success, but there's a lot more going on behind the scenes that people don't necessarily see because we don't celebrate the failures, right? Even if they helped us with our successes. So
they mentioned that in my favorite book. It's called The Slight Edge, and they use that same example of Babe Ruth and how to get good, you have to be bad. There's so many famous professional people who started off at, failing. They didn't get accepted for what they wanted to be, and now they're the best at it. So it's really just, you have to fail a lot, and you have to accept that that's how you are going to succeed. The only way to get to success is failure. And it's usually not as bad as you think it's going to be either. Like the failures, you just move on. Like everything else, you just move on. Nobody's going to stick in their head forever. You know what I mean? Like it's just a thing.
Back to the video point. Nobody's going to remember if you maybe burped in your video.
Yeah, if you mess up, like they're gonna laugh and and they might, if they remember it, it's good because you own space in their mind. That's it. You know what I mean? Like that's not bad.
So I've heard the name of that book that you mentioned before, The Slight Edge. Is that totally guessing here because it's been a long time since I've heard it, but is that like a sales oriented book or what is that?
It's not exactly sales. It's more just mindset. And the premise of it is that the little actions you take every day is what's going to make you succeed. Not one big overnight thing.
Right.
And then they can also lead you to failure. So the little simple mistakes in judgment every day will lead you to, a bad life. And it looks like you're going the same. Like the whole time, all the decisions you're making, you might make good decisions every day and you might make bad decisions, but they look the same until eventually like the momentum of time builds them up. Yeah. So if you're making the right ones, you're going to go up. If you're making the wrong ones, you're going to go down. So that's just what the idea of the book is.
I heard that referenced on this like spiritualism podcast or whatever, but I think it holds true for most things, which is like every action you make is just a seed that you're planting, and you might not know what that's going to turn into until 6 to 8 months from now when you finally see what it turns into. So I think that's kind of along the lines of what you're saying.
Yeah.
And maybe I need to read that book. That sounds interesting.
It's a great book. I highly recommend it because like they just say that things that you're thinking, oh, this isn't going to kill me if I do this. Like it won't today, but over time it will. So that's the point into it. And that if you think your actions aren't working, keep doing it. It's the consistency that's going to make them work.
Consistency is key, people. That's right.
That's what The Slight Edge is about.
I'm putting that on my Amazon wish list right now.
It's a great book. I highly recommend it.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Amanda. I just had 2 more questions for you here. Okay. So the second to last one is slightly interesting, especially because we're younger. If you hadn't chosen real estate as your career, what sorts of things would you see yourself doing alternatively?
Oh, I spent 2 years like stressing this question. Yeah. So I wanted to do something in medical. Because I just like helping. I love helping a lot. I'm very sympathetic and very empathetic, and I just love people and things. So like I love animals, so I was like, oh, I'd rather be a veterinarian or I don't know, anything medical probably. Just go back to school and do something in medical.
And people don't talk about this as often as I think they should, which is that real estate in and of itself, although it's not quite as extreme, I guess, as helping in the field of medicine, is a service job. Like you are at the end of the day helping somebody accomplish something quite significant, which is another thing that I've uncovered in talking to people on here. The reason that a lot of people end up sticking with it, they might have started it because the opportunity for financial growth is there. There's a lot of freedom involved in this career. But at the end of the day, it is rewarding, not only financially, but because you are helping people out. I wonder if you feel the same way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. There have been plenty of times where I've helped somebody out, even if I didn't get money from it because the deal didn't close and they learned that they couldn't buy, so they had to keep renting or something. Like I've just helped them out. And that's the biggest important thing is where you live. You know what I mean? You have to have a home. You have to have shelter. So this is a very stressful time for people when they don't know what they're going to do about that. So that's why I'm like, all right, I'm going to help you out with that. And I feel like I'm good at dealing with stressful situations. I kind of keep a level head and I'm like, all right, this is what we're going to do. We kind of plan it out and just try to be strategic. So I like helping people with that.
For sure. So my last question here, Amanda, is the closer, the grand closer. This is how we end all of them, right? So if you could give a word of advice to new agents or agents who are just struggling with the market conditions or just young agents, however you want to call it, what would your advice be to them?
Try to pick a brokerage where you're going to get support, because that is where my career actually started. Like I said, I was at 3 different companies before this one, and they have so many promises, but you have to actually make sure they're going to deliver. So interview the brokerages, see what they offer, look at different ones, and kind of talk to the agents, talk to the brokers. Don't be afraid to talk to people and ask questions. Because really where you're at and the support you get is going to make the difference in the starting of your career. You know, you are what determines the ending of it, but just starting it is so hard that you need to figure out what they're going to offer you when you start.
For sure. So ask lots of questions. Yes. Meet people, right?
Get a mentor, like somebody that you can ask questions to 24/7, somebody that you know is not going to get annoyed with you or that is going to be able to answer you pretty quickly. So
will be responsive, like we were talking about.
Yeah, so find a mentor is my biggest advice to somebody getting into real estate.
That is very good advice. I have an alternate version of that question as well, because I find that in these podcasts, we tend to focus more on the agents, but this was kind of started as a way to be a resource for agents, but also just the average Jane Doe and Joe Doe. That's not a real thing, but we'll pretend it is. So we tend to stray away from providing advice to people who are just interested in the real estate market. So if you could give advice alternatively to just the average home buyer or seller, what would your advice be?
This is going to sound like silly advice, but pick a realtor and interview them, and then interview others. You know what I mean? Like interview other realtors and pick one based on not just their personality and how well you get along with them, but just what they're going to offer you. Use a realtor. A lot of people think that they can use Zillow for things, and Zillow's great, but they're just not personal with you all the time. They're a great company, but you need somebody who's going to be with you and you're like advisor. So use a realtor and listen to what they have to say, because they know what they're talking about. They deal with it every single day. And I know that you might think you know what you're talking about, but chances are like we don't know what we're talking about unless we're in it every single day.
Yeah. You saw a couple YouTube videos, but you are not a real estate agent sort of thing, right?
Yeah. That's how I feel about everything else, medical, like we try to diagnose ourselves. Don't do that. Go to the doctor. You know what I'm saying? Like if you don't have practice in something, you might think based on how things look from the outside, but that's not always the case.
So in both cases, whether you're a real estate agent or Jane, or what did I say, Joe Doe or something like that, just shop around, ask people questions. Don't go with the first one all the time. I think that's good advice, Amanda. And this was great, man. I appreciate you coming in. This was all good stuff. Like I said, it's good to get some alternate perspectives. No offense to Mike. It's nice to get some youthful perspectives in here. No,
I was going to say, I don't know what kind of knowledge or anything I can provide, because Mike has got everything. Mike is the full everything.
Listen, that's the thing about this that I also uncover, which I sound like a broken record when I say that, but there's a lot of gaps. Like no matter who you are, there's always stuff that you don't know. There's insight that you don't always have because you just don't have that perspective. So like we were just saying, Mike uses a notebook and maybe he won't use the CRM as much, that sort of thing. So,
well, back to my other point, I've asked somebody who was in real estate for 5-6 years, they didn't know the answer. And then they asked me something and I knew the answer. So you know what I mean? Yeah, like exactly. There's, like you said, there's always stuff you don't know. There's always stuff you can learn.
So thanks for coming, Amanda, filling in the gaps, as I said, that sort of thing. I really appreciate it. And that's it.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me.
We'll see you next week, guys. All right. That was Amanda Meunier. So yeah, Amanda's pretty good on camera, man. I know she's also into podcasts and stuff. I see her posting podcasts on her Facebook. So I figured she'd be a good addition for this week. This is our second in-person, in-studio podcast. It's been a little bit of an adjustment, but I am digging it. Let's see, what sorts of things do we have to promote this week? Nothing huge coming this week. Same sort of stuff as usual. So go ahead and follow us on social media at The Real Estate Playbook. That's Instagram and Facebook. You can hit up our website at therealestateplaybook.com. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, leave a comment, like whatever you feel like. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of that sort of thing, go ahead and leave us a review and or follow the show on there. It will help us out. I don't believe I have anything else, but I haven't said this in a while, so I just wanted to throw it out there. If you're interested in being on the show, even if you and I don't know each other or you are not even based in Florida, that is quite all right. Go ahead and you can either go to our website, therealestateplaybook.com, and fill out the form there, or you can just shoot me an email. My email is Paul, Paul, Goldman, Goldman, at 54realty.com. We'd love to have you on. And I think that's it for this week, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.